Good evening. I would like to call to order the regular meeting noticed for today. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Wong,
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami. Here. Councilmember Udi,
Here.
Vice Mayor Talt,
Here.
Mayor Jacobowski.
Here. The agenda is posted 72 hours prior to each meeting at the following locations: City Hall, the Crowell Public Library, and the Stoneman Building. The agenda is also posted on the city's website. The city welcomes public input. At this time, the public may address the city council on items that are not on the agenda. Pursuant to state law, the city council may not discuss or take action on issues not on the meeting agenda. To ensure that everyone, including those joining us remotely, all are asked to speak clearly. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes and will be timed by city staff. I would like to ask City Clerk Baker to explain how public comment works.
Thank you, Mayor. For each item on the agenda, there will be time for public comment. We'll accept comments in 3 ways. First, we will take in-person comments for each item. Please fill out a speaker card and turn it into me if you wish to speak on an item. There's a countdown timer to the left of the public microphone to help speakers keep track of the remaining time to speak. Next, we will then ask for comments from our Zoom participants. When we ask for public comments via Zoom, there are 2 ways you can let us know you would like to speak. First, you can use the raised hand feature, which is a button that's found by clicking on participants and then clicking on raised hand on the bottom right side of the screen. Please do not use this feature until we have asked for public comment, or else we may not see it or know which item you're asking to speak on. As a second option, you can send a message using the chat box saying you would like to speak on this particular agenda item. Comments will be accepted only until the end of the public comment period for that item. Finally, I will then read into the record any public comments received by email for that particular item. Due to technical limitations associated with gathering, printing, and sorting emailed public comment, the city has instituted a 3 p.m. cutoff the day of the city council meeting for emailed public comments. This is to ensure there's sufficient time to gather and present the emailed comments at the city council meeting. Any comments received after 3 p.m. the day of a city council meeting will be included in the public comment record, but will not be read at the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak at this time? Seeing no one, do we have anyone who is not here who would like to speak?
I do not see any raised hands on Zoom or chat, but we did receive an email that I was able to distribute to both the council and the public ahead of time, so I will only summarize it. It was from Miss Kathleen Katie, and it is regarding her opposition to District Attorney Gascon and asking for city council's interaction with that. And that is all the public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. Do we have a city manager's report?
We do indeed, Mayor. Thank you so much. All right. Good evening, Council. It is nice to see you. Please go ahead to the next slide. Becoming our forever challenge. All right, we will begin as we usually begin or end with COVID. We are still in the Omicron surge, although we show signs of slowing. Thankfully, I've been watching the numbers in San Marino, and they have dramatically slowed down in terms of their increase. So we are very grateful for that and appreciate everyone in the community for helping to slow the spread. As a result of the surge that was underway, we did cancel all of our events through the end of February, so that does continue. And we do just want to remind the community that we are governed by LA County. And so although the state of California is making some announcements about lifting some of their masking requirements, until LA County does that, it doesn't really impact us. So we need to keep a close eye on LA County for that. All right, next slide, please. Thank you so much. I am delighted to say hello to the person to my left. This is Isidro Figueroa. I'm happy to introduce him to the community. He is our new Community Development Director. He did begin last Monday, so he is on day is this 10, day 10, and what a 10 days it has been. We are excited to have him here. He has almost 20 years of experience in the planning industry, most recently from the city of Oxnard. And we really are delighted to have him here and be part of the team. He's been a great addition. I will just remind the community and the council that sadly for him, he has the thankless task of his first ever staff report to you all. Tonight is the housing element. So be kind. This is not the entry that I would have wished for him. But he will do it with grace, and we are delighted to have him here. So welcome aboard. Thank you so much. Go ahead. Thank you. All right, news and events. We've got just a couple of quick things to report. First, I am so excited to announce that our town hall had record attendance earlier this week. It was related to the budget. It was making sense of the budget. And it was a panel discussion that was predominantly led by, of course, our finance director, Paul Chung, who you'll hear a lot more from tonight. And also Councilmember Ken Udy was there as well as one of our finance liaisons. So the conversation was outstanding. The participation was great. We did have an interpreter present for this, and I think that helped our participation tremendously. So thank you to everyone in the community who joined us. And we are looking forward to our March event in just a few weeks to replicate that success. A couple of surveys are due towards the end of this week on February 11th. If you are in the community and you want to give some suggestions on the budget, what priority initiatives we should be considering, please do go ahead and do that. We also have a traffic study survey that is out as well. And so please take a look at that.
The link, when some residents have tried it recently, is not active. I don't know if that was brought to your attention. or,
That
I'm
was
sorry,
not for the priority
Director
initiatives.
Thrones, for the traffic
The
survey.
traffic study. Okay, we'll check on that. Thank you.
Maybe saying it wrong, but you get that, error page on the city website.
Great. Thank you for letting us know. I apologize for that. We'll take a look at that. And then just in terms of housekeeping, tonight, your item 7 will be pulled from the agenda. This concerns some traffic adjustments near Huntington. The Public Safety Commission has been diligently working on this item and wants to continue. So they did have some discussion at their meeting earlier this week. They're going to consider it again at their March meeting. So we will pull this item for you tonight and have it back when the Public Safety Commission is finished. So, and then last but certainly not least, we got an excellent comment from a resident in response to the traffic survey when the link was working, apparently. So we'll get back to that. But really just some fantastic input. The highlight essentially is right in the middle. It says the street and sidewalk maintenance in Santa Marina is superb, all caps. So we appreciate hearing that. That was nice to hear from one of our residents, and we are delighted. So that concludes my report for tonight. I don't need to give you any sort of financial update because you will be getting a lot of that as the meeting gets underway from our finance director, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any council members have questions for Dr. Merlot? I see none. Moving along, thank you very much. Item number 1 is the acknowledgement of the San Marino Public Library Foundation Bookmark Contest winner. The City Council is proud to recognize the 2022 San Marino Library Foundation Bookmark Contest winners this evening. We are always amazed by the children's creativity and ability to bring the theme to life. The city greatly appreciates all that the San Marino Public Library Foundation does in support of library programming and services. I believe we have our Library Foundation President, Hal Sasugu, available on Zoom to share with us the winners.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi. It's really great to see you guys. I haven't been very active in the city because of the COVID. So I hope that everyone is well and safe and taking care of themselves. I'd like to start by, let's see if I could get my, I'll get my screen up. I'd like to at least start by saying good evening, Madam Chair and members of the City Council. I'm Hal Swetsugu, President of the San Marino Public Library Foundation. I'm here with Cindy Chan. She's the Executive Director of the Foundation. And I'm not sure if we have any board members out there, but if they are, they're out there. Tonight, I'd like to announce the winners of the library bookmark contest. It's a very exciting day for some of our kids. This is our 15th year in the bookmark contest. Our theme this year is kindness, which is really appropriate during these times right now. It's been a very popular art contest amongst our students and the community at large. We've had quite a few number of contestants that came forward with their artwork. They ranged from places like, of course, San Marino, but Alhambra, Pasadena, Monterey Park, and we actually had one from Rancho Palos Verdes, so it's pretty exciting. There were 93 entries received, so that's a very good count for what's happening in the world today. So our contest, this contest, we had 6 winners in 3 categories, ages 8 and under, 9 through 13, and 14 through 18. And the best part of it is they all received a $100 gift card. So that's really exciting for us and them. So the way that it works is these 6 artwork will be displayed. We'll be creating, we will be creating bookmarks on a limited edition during the whole year of 2022. And then during the time when one of our students has a bookmark that is actually being distributed, that will have a full-size display at the library's lobby. So it's kind of exciting for all the kids to come in with their friends to showcase what they've done. So with that said, we're very proud to share the winners of the 2022 Bookmark Design Contest. And I think, Christina, if we could go to the next slide. Great. So ages 8 and under, Adeline Chen created this Kindness Changes Everything. And then we have also Clayton Chan, who's actually a part of this meeting. Thank you, Clayton, for coming on board. This is a great contribution to our bookmark contest. So we have also ages 9 through 13, Jean Zhou, and I'll give you some time to take a look at it. A smile can change everything. And then we'll have Dagny Tang, which is also 9 through 13. Be kind to all kinds, which is great. Then we have ages 14 through 18, and I saw Katia Lavorie in the audience right now. Thank you very much for being a part of this meeting. And she's done a really great job of showcasing how kindness should be. And thank you so much for that. And then we have Catherine Gutierrez, which is showing both cats and mice could live together in this world. So these are the 6 winners. Thank you so much for being a part of this contest. We continue to have these contests every year, and it's been really an exciting thing for us foundation members to actually put this on. And I'm hoping that the kids had a great time doing this as well. So with that, if there's any questions out there, Cindy and I are available for any comments.
Thank you. Council members, Councilwoman Shepherd Romey.
I just wanted to thank you and the foundation for continuing this wonderful tradition in our city, and also congratulate all the lucky winners. Often there's quite a few, and I imagine during COVID there were even more. submissions, and they're very charming. And it's a highlight to get a book at the library and get such a great bookmark, and wonderful to share with friends and family. So thank you for continuing it and your work in that regard.
Councilmember Udi.
I too would like to thank the foundation for its great work over the years and continuing this tradition, and congrats to the winners.
Councilmember Huang.
Yes, congratulations to all the winners, and I want to say hello to Hal, Chair Hal, and board members.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yes, and thank you. I also congratulate the winners. I'm still a little upset that I have yet to win, although I put one in every year. But congratulations to all the winners, and thank you once again to the foundation for the hard work that you put in to keeping the library going. Thank you.
Different age brackets there.
Yeah, well, I know.
Maybe we can have a senior.
They don't
senior section.
explain that mentally.
We'll add a senior division. I also would like to congratulate all the winners, and special notice to Clayton and Katia attending this evening. We're really happy to have you with us. And thank you, Hal. We really appreciate the work of the foundation. You've been extremely generous to the city and with this wonderful contest, and I enjoy collecting my bookmarks each year. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, council members. We really do enjoy doing these things for our kids and our communities. So this will go on for a long time from now. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. Item number 2 is a presentation from Athens Services on SB 1383. I know that we have had a lot of interest and questions from the community. So we are delighted to have this presentation from Athens, and thank you, Mr. Chen, for being here.
Madam Mayor, honorable members of the council, my name is Ed Chen, Director of Government Affairs for Athens Services. I'm here with our Vice President of Government Affairs, Christian Warner. It's my pleasure and honor to present this quick presentation on Senate Bill 1383, California's short-lived climate pollutant reduction law. Next slide, please. So Senate Bill 1383 is the most consequential legislative effort in the state of California in the last 30 years. It started with AB 939, which is the most significant waste reduction bill that sets the diversion level for all cities throughout the state of California. AB 32, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Initiative, sets an ambitious goal for the entire state to adopt. And just a little backtrack as to why we are talking about methane as a greenhouse gas. Organic matters, when devoid of oxygen, naturally decays. It generates methane gas, which is 72 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. So the bill, Senate Bill 1383, is to reduce the level of methane gas that's generated from waste sources. Next slide, please. So what you may ask, what considers organic waste? The law is actually quite broad in its definition. That includes all types of food scraps, your yard trimmings. And we know this from our tonnage reports. San Marino is a very green city. You have a lot of garden and lawn clippings. But also, some may not know that 100% fiber-based paper products are considered organic as well. So your pizza boxes, the part that is grease stained, that is perfectly acceptable to throw in along with your grass clipping under this new collection method under Senate Bill 1383. Next slide, please. So this is a quick overview about the presentation today. It's going to be kind of technical, but I'll try to keep it very light. These are some of the major areas about Senate Bill 1383. The law requires several initiatives in terms of each municipality complying and adopting to these efforts. And I know the city had already taken up its ordinance, which is a first step in that process. And I'll highlight some of the other areas that Senate Bill 1383 requires. Next slide, please. The first effort is enforcement and compliance, and we talk about route audits. So Athens is a hauler with many types of collection vehicle. We're very proud of our backyard service collection vehicle here in San Marino. But also we're adding another vehicle to our fleet, and that is a Jeep Wrangler that's going to be operated by a route auditor. And we're not thinking about, please stop and think that this is not a trash police. This is someone that's going to be focused on outreach and education and in compliance. This person will be going to various customers' accounts, whether it's commercial, residential. We'll be flipping lids and taking photo and documenting any instances that where compliance efforts or additional efforts are needed for compliance. So of course, the first efforts are going to be outreach, education, asking people to comply. Only in the most egregious circumstances, someone that refuses to comply at all, what we recommend to the city for any additional enforcement actions. Next slide, please. So this will be an at-a-glance view of what the city will look at, and in terms of the reports that are gathered from the various routes, detailed customer records, accounts, and a photographic picture about the enforcement compliance visit. Next slide, please. So we'll be doing additional waste characterization as well. That is a very key component of the law. That is something Athens already does to figure out what type of waste stream that we collect. But more importantly, we're going to be looking at, after we collect the material, after it's been through our material recovery process, what percentage of that material that is going out is still need additional efforts. We'll take a look at the next slide, please. So already we provide the city with an annual report that includes a log of all the complaints, all the things that we do well in the city, as well as major key areas that we provide to city staff. So in this law, we'll be providing you additional data for you to look at in terms of waste characterization. These reports will be available to city staff at their fingertips. Next slide, please. So here comes the effort about outreach and education. We have a number of different efforts that we are undertaking to reach out to the customer about this new law. Many of you have gotten if you've gotten a trash bill or an electronic bill, you've gotten a billing insert that talks about the new law. We've also launched a website, and that's, if you have a URL, www.canirecyclemy.com. It goes to our what goes where guide. So you may be curious about which type of items can my coffee cup be recycled. You can punch in that information, select San Marino in the drop-down box, and it will give you exactly the type of waste stream that we provide in each of the municipalities that we serve, and what can does it go into. So the answer to that is that would go into the mixed waste can, because of the plastic lining with the wax that's on the paper cup, as well as the PP5 lid, that material that will go into your mixed waste cans to be recycled.
Could you repeat that website?
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor, it's www.canirecyclemy.com.
Thank you.
So this is another in-app view. A lot of this effort is going to be undertaken by a team of Athens personnel that's going to be conducting these education and outreach efforts. By these accounts, we'll be conducting these visits, and they will be documented so that city will have these data at their fingertips when it comes time for review with CalRecycle. Next slide, please. So these are the different facets of data points that we'll be gathering. Some of these screenshots that you've seen are from a data analytics software Tableau that we're deploying to really gather these disparate point of data from different departments, pull together maps, pull together customer account information, pull together these in-person individualized visits, and summarizing it in a way that is very visually and graphically pleasing, and city staff will have access to all of that so that we can present to CalRecycle. Next slide, please. The law also requires procurement support. So it's not only its effort to reduction at the front end, but it's also trying to create a marketplace for the recycled product. So it does so by requiring haulers to make procurement decisions based on renewable natural gas, for example. So our fleet in our procurement alone, which should cover the city of San Marino. Over the years, our compost giveaway events in the city has been very popular as well. And the law also lists compost as a means to meet that procurement requirement for the law. Next slide, please. The law also creates a food recovery requirement. The San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, as well as other jurisdictions, have created a regional network. Athens is also partnering up with organizations, including tech startups, such as a company called CareIt, that's CAREIT. It is an app where food recovery organizations like big food waste or food generators can post their items on that app, and a nonprofit will be able to log on, just like Uber Eats, you order food, you can actually make connection using that CareIt app. In that in-app way, they will connect the two organizations and facilitate that food recovery. So Athens has been an early supporter of those efforts. We're monitoring the space, and will continue to assist the city in its compliance efforts in food recovery. Next slide, please. So again, the city of San Marino has done a lot of great things, and namely, I think our marquee client, Huntington Library and Gardens, has its food waste bin since early 2016. We at the city, we heard Director Throne loud and clear. We've actually made connection with the Huntington Library Gardens external affairs staff with our marketing communications team. And we'll be highlighting some of the great efforts that have already been made here in the city of San Marino as we continue to stand ready to support the city with regards to all efforts to comply with Senate Bill 1383. That concludes my presentation. Any questions for myself, or harder questions for my Vice President, Christian Winter?
Thank you, and thank you both for being here. We have started as a city in augmenting what you have sent out. The one question we have had from a number of residents, and then I will certainly pass this to my colleagues, if you could address again, some folks may have gardeners who take their waste with them, and they said they don't have an appropriate bin. Can you comment on how that should be handled? Thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I believe your question is those that garden waste that are generated and that gardeners will take it upon themselves to remove that waste. So this statewide legislation impacts not just San Marino, but all jurisdiction alike. So for green waste contractors, or for city green waste contractors as well, those tonnages need to be attributed at the ultimate source of ultimate point of disposal or recycling. So in the case of Athens, we will take all of your green waste that is set out at your trash set out location, and we will be taking that to a composting facility, and we will be providing the city with those tonnage data as a way to comply with the Senate bill.
And my apologies, to detail a little further, how should those residents designate those items for you, since the rest of us have bins full of green and it would be just what is coming from their home? How would you like that designated?
Yes, in the past, we have had a green waste sticker that the customer may request from Athens that we label on each container, but we also understand that residents may want to have the availability and the options to have multiple containers. Depends on the level of green waste loads that they have. So our drivers have been trained, and they've been trained again and again recently regarding looking at the type of waste stream, because in our backyard service model, as this backyard service driver backs up the truck, they're looking at the various containers, and they are part of this training as well to identify the type of waste streams that our customers are throwing away. So it's not just an adjustment for customers, it is an adjustment for policymakers, our drivers, and our personnel alike. So we're all in this together, and we are definitely mindful and knowing that residents of San Marino are very sophisticated, and they are participating in these programs as our billing inserts and our multiple outreach endeavors have shown. And we will continue to be diligent and continue to educate our drivers about identifying these type of waste stream and putting in an appropriate bucket.
So those stickers are available?
They are available,
Great,
yes.
thank you so much. I know this is mostly a presentation. Colleagues, do you have any pressing questions?
I do, just to follow up. So we're not going to get a special can that says food waste. We could request containers to put on, or we could request stickers to put on a can and identify it as food waste. Is that what I understand it to be?
Yes, Vice Mayor Tull. In this backyard service model, the customer supplies the barrels. So in these 30-gallon barrel, we will train our drivers to additionally look out for the food waste items if it's absent of any, if it's void of any green
Okay.
waste.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Vice Mayor Tull.
Thank you. Councilmember Huang, looks like you have,
No, I just want to thank you for your presentation and for your service. Thank you.
thank you. Councilwoman Shepherd Rami?
I guess I have one question for you concerning some residents have asked if we are adding food waste, for example, the pizza box that you brought up, to our greens, our organic matter, our lawn clipping, et cetera. There's already an existing, let's say, rodent problem in most neighborhoods because of the foliage and our fruit trees and other things that people have in their backyard. And so I'm wondering, without rodent-proof containers, I'm not sure that you're going to be able to get compliance. People are questioning whether they want to put those sort of smelly food items, if you will, in with what would normally they've been very actively separating out, their garden waste and their lawn clippings, leaves, et cetera, or else that will just add to a current problem and rodents bring coyotes. So I'm wondering if you're getting any pushback and have any help for residents who are concerned with combining food into those things that previously, might have a separate, very secure can where they kept all of their kitchen trash in.
Yes, Councilmember Shepherd Romney. We have some best practices guide that we have made available on our website. Things such as freeze your food waste and bring it out on trash day during so that it reduces the smell to attract any wildlife. Also, because of such feedback from our customers throughout our various jurisdictions, we've actually now allowed clear plastic bags to be used to be bagging these food waste items. We understand it's a necessity for residents. We just must add the disclaimer per Cal Recycle that these plastic bags are not going to be recycled. They're going to be tear open and liberated so that its content can be composted. But we certainly understand that residents, a perfect example of it would be the grocer bags that for grocers that are clear so that the driver can see the contents inside. So we've recently set out additional communication on that across our social media platforms as well as our website, and we'll be continuing to communicate with city staff and our customers about such changes so that we can maximize the participation.
All right.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Udi?
Thank you for your time. And I think you got a huge challenge here with public education and awareness because it's going to be very painful. So I would encourage you to be, very aggressive and don't consider a website or an insert into a bill to be ineffective. So
We'd like to see you more often.
Duly noted.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. With that, we appreciate your time, gentlemen, and I think we're all set to move forward.
Madam Mayor, I apologize to interrupt, but I just wanted to report back that we've checked the link for the traffic survey and it is working at least now. It is for the community's interest, www.cityofsanmarino.org/traffic survey. That will take you to the link. And as a result of any problems that there might have been, we're going to extend the deadline for a week or so. So that'll go out in our weekly briefing tomorrow. Thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again. We appreciate your time. To follow the words of Dr. Marlowe, I would like to officially welcome our new Community Development Director as mayor, Mr. Figueroa. I'm sorry this is your first night before us. We are delighted that you are here. This is the time and place set for a public hearing to consider item 3, the Planning Commission's recommendation to certify the proposed initial study negative declaration and adopt the 2021 2021-2029 Housing Element Update. May we have your presentation, please, Director Figueroa?
Wait, Mayor Jacobaski, can I interject? I do not know that we removed item 7 from our calendar, and I believe that we might have a community member who was going to ask to attend. This has to do with the one item that was before Public Safety Commission, and I don't know that whether we've officially removed it from the calendar.
So staff has pulled this item from the agenda tonight, so we will not hear it, but if there's a person here who would like to speak on it, if you would like, you could offer an opportunity to speak now.
I don't know because I can't see, but I understood at the end of the meeting that I listened to, there was going to be a person, so I do not know if they're aware.
My
Okay.
understanding is that if action was needed by the commission to pull it, they would be happy to speak. But is there, let's ask the question. Is there anyone who wished to speak on item number 7 that's going to be pulled on the agenda? City Clerk Baker?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Albo?
Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of the Public Safety Commission for pulling the item. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Al.
We appreciate your presence, Mr. Bogue. Thank you.
Didn't want you to have to sit through all of the rest of it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, certainly. May we please have your presentation, Director Figueroa?
Madam Mayor, council members, I just want to begin by saying it's an honor and I'm really excited to be serving as your director. In the past 10 days, it's been a challenge to get the staff report before you. And I also want to highlight that it's not just been the development of the staff report before you, but my predecessor, our interim community development director, Alexander Hamilton, he worked hard to get this project before the planning commission in order to get us to this point. As you all know, and you don't need someone who's been here 10 days to remind you how difficult, rigorous, and challenging this process is. And typically, when you go to planning commission on this subject matter, you usually have 3 to 4 weeks to prepare for city council, and we only had about a week to prepare. And in the midst of that, there were some issues with the staff reports and errors, and as director, I take full responsibility, and I want to thank you for your patience. Staff has a presentation that will be presided by our consultant, Mr. Brett McNulty from McNulty Consulting. Staff will be available afterwards for any questions. Myself, city attorney's office, city manager's office, and our consultant, Brett McNulty. Brett, please begin, and please let us know when you want us to go on to the next slide.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the City Council and staff. My name is Brett McNulty. I am.
Good evening, sir. May I ask you to speak just a bit louder, please? Thank you.
How's this sound? Is that loud enough?
I believe so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I want to thank staff for bringing me in to help them get this housing element before you. In looking through the history of this project, it has shown itself to be quite an effort on the part of the city to get it where it is at, and it has been no small task for my predecessors, Jane Riley at Four Leaf Consulting, and Alex Hamilton, who was a great help getting it to the Planning Commission. As you heard from Director Figueroa, it's been quite an effort over the last few weeks to bring this forward, and I appreciate his grace and kindness as we work through some issues with the document. And I want to thank you, Mayor and City Council, and your patience going through that process. And so I'll just get right into it. If we could advance the slide. Thank you, Christina. Tonight, we're going to be looking for our recommendation for you tonight. Then we will be discussing the housing element update purpose, go over review some key issues. Most of this is going to be for the benefit of those who haven't participated in this process, which is looking through the history, it looks like a lot of people in the community were very involved. We're going to discuss the housing element revisions based on the HCD review letter that was received on December 31st of last year. We're going to summarize the Planning Commission recommendation and the CEQA recommendation and compliance with CEQA. Then we're going to discuss the next step in this process, open it up for a discussion by the city council and hold a public hearing. And then we'll be looking for a motion on the final housing element at the end of the presentation. So if we could advance the slides. As the mayor had stated, we're going to be asking that before the end of the date specified in government code, that the city council hold a hearing and gain feedback on the final 2021-2029 sixth cycle housing element and consider the Planning Commission recommendation to certify the proposed initial study and adopt the housing element. If we could advance to the next slide. As I mentioned, the purpose of the housing element is it is an element of the city's general plan. Every jurisdiction in California, city or county, are affected by the housing element. It sets the goals, policies, and programs for the city, and by state law is updated every 8 years, reflecting the legislature's mission on providing affordable immediate housing for every Californian. The sixth cycle is heavily regulated by the state, and the emphasis is upon providing housing in the face of a very large housing shortage, and getting an analysis that shows the fair share of housing for each community in the state. And that the tool that the state uses to accomplish that is through the local council of governments, Southern California Association of Governments, through the regional housing needs allocation process. The penalty for non-compliance, if not in this case, not rezoning for affordable housing, is dictated by state law. And the potential loss of land use authority that could come along with it. Christina, if you could advance to the next slide, please. As we discussed, the RENA is generally, we have these categories, but it's generally broken down into the first three categories here, which are the affordable housing categories. The city has 240, a number of 240, that's what those first three columns total up to, in the affordable housing categories. You don't have to build it. The city is not required to build housing or take property from people to build housing, but it is required to make zoning using its land use powers through the California Constitution to make this the zoning, the amount of land available to allow the zoning that would allow people to choose to develop that if that was the case. And then the rest of the RENA of 397 is in the moderate and above moderate categories. Next slide, please. So what gets us here? It's to address these issues, statewide regional housing issues and special needs housing. As you're all aware, there is a homeless problem throughout California. This is an attempt to address that problem, along with making sure that each jurisdiction plans for special needs of people who are housed in our communities. Lack of affordable housing is yet again the problem. And now the federal government and the state of California are changing the laws to make sure that any past inequity in housing throughout the state is addressed through affirmatively furthering fair housing. The acronym of AFFH, which you see throughout this document, and that we received direction from the state of California late in the year, as reflected in the letter that was sent to the city, to revise the housing element and include more requirements. And if you could move to the next slide. Thank you. And you do not need a consultant to tell you about your issues locally. I know that you know them, and the summary of issues that I've seen in the recordings and in the documents that I've reviewed and in the staff reports is the primary constraints to housing. There is the lack of vacant or underutilized land. There are extremely high land values that do not encourage the development of housing that would be priced affordably. There is a lack of affordable housing just generally within the city. And there's the term zoning mismatch. And what that's referring to is that the zoning that exists in the city, it's not a mismatch for the uses that are in those zones, but it's a mismatch for the city to provide a more of affordable housing types of land uses. Changes to state law requiring rezoning for affordable housing by October 15th of 2022. That is a local issue that the state has codified. Opposition and concerns of the community that I have seen in the documents and the recordings are environmental concerns regarding traffic, noise, crowding, quality of life, and the character of the community, and then valued community institutions and open spaces. And then I've seen similar comments that were sent to state HCD from folks who wanted to see the programs not be approved by the state. But the state is definitely the driver of the programs that you see in your housing element. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So throughout the update, the city gathered data, worked very hard to bring a draft together, holding town hall meetings, created the website, opinion surveys, had stakeholder interviews, city planning commission and city council workshops with a draft housing element released in July of last year, and then a series of additional city council hearings. And I was looking, it looks like you were all here for those meetings. So I know you know all about this. And so you could probably teach me more about the issues that I saw in your housing element than I was able to learn about in the short time that I have been lucky enough to be here to help you. So then you sent off your draft housing element to HCD for review. Received that letter back on New Year's Eve, and the city has been scrambling to get the housing element revised and response to those comments since that day. If we could move on to the next slide, please. So this slide shows the RENA that was on the previous slide and compares it to the zoning that's in your housing element. And as you can see in the affordable categories in those first three columns, there is you've set aside programs that will allow land use changes that will exceed the requirement, the pure land use requirement by the state. And so And then you have more than enough land for the moderate and above moderate housing categories. If we move on to the next slide, please. Very good. So this is this next series of slides is a little bit wordy. If you would like me to stop, please stop me and ask me any questions that you have about some of these comments. But I'm just going to discuss the approach to the comments regarding the main issue. The state had basically 4 main topical areas that they commented on and then got into some detail. And this first one was a review of the last housing element programs and how they are going to be changed. What we did is we updated the housing element text and table 4 to tie changes from the 5th housing element cycle to the 6th housing element cycle that addresses their comments. If we could move to the next slide, please. The housing needs, resources and constraints. We took the guidelines from the state to respond to these questions, and there were quite a few of them, and there is a lot of data analysis going on in the latter part of the housing element to address AFFH guidance from the state. There's a lot of interesting and good information about history and the region there, and so the housing element has been populated with a lot of data in regards to responding to these comments. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Housing programs. Staff has taken the comments from HCD in regarding 5 different housing programs and the issues. This is where we get into some land use requirement changes and some program changes to address some density bottom lines. We have provided you with a redlined version of the housing element and some errata at the last minute to address some discrepancies. This is where most of this information lies. In attachment C to the staff report summarizes and provides a page-by-page update on where the language is and where the red lines exist. And it has been renumbered today to show where in the staff report numbering it is, in addition to where it is in the housing element. So thank you for your patience with that numbering, but I think it's very functional to use now. So if we can move to the next slide, please. We have addressed the comments about a shortfall of adequate sites. As I showed you on that slide, while there is not a calculated shortfall of sites, one thing that HCD does try to require regularly is an overage of sites due to, they try to request a 30% buffer beyond what is in the housing element, because what they say is things like you don't have a track record of production, or if sites fall out of the inventory or are developed at the base zoning, for example, with no affordable housing, then you will have to replace the unit in your inventory. To avoid that, they ask for additional units, and they may ask for additional units. On to the next slide, please. Then we have addressed additional comments in the text of the programs where possible to address their questions or their comments in a manner that keeps the program intact, but will add some commitments to time timing of the program. If we can go to the next slide, please. And we addressed issues regarding non-governmental and non-governmental constraints. Next slide, please. Hello. I'm wondering if I lost my feed. Can anyone speak?
We can hear you.
We can hear you, sir.
Oh, very good. If we could advance the slide, I don't see the slide advance. I'm looking for, there we go. Thank you so much. I thought I lost you all. Hopefully I didn't put you to sleep. For quantified objectives, the state is made quite a few comments about the city not demonstrating through its housing element that it would meet its objectives. However, many of the comments they provided actually did get addressed in the November housing element and needed to be pointed out in the table that we provided. That table will be presented in a letter as it's revised to the state, addressing all of their comments, and that's why the table is there, hopefully to be helpful to you also in reviewing this big document and the changes. And if we could advance to the next slide, please. During the Planning Commission hearing, we heard comments about the diversity in the city and the affordable housing in the C1 zone and potential ways of accommodating or changing the overlay to address HCD's comments. And then in general, just how the state was not really seeing San Marino in some of the comments that were received. The commission discussed how an overlay could be appropriate and discussed market demand for high density housing projects and had a pretty good discussion about cost and land and construction. And we discussed the city's market analysis that's on its webpage, which has been, it was decided to add that analysis as an appendix to the housing element to support the assertion that the city actually did its homework on its marketplace, including housing, in response to comments from HCD. Go to the next slide, please. And the Planning Commission, after additional discussion, voted 4-1 to adopt a resolution recommending the proposed revisions be forwarded to the City Council. Next slide, please. So in regards to in finishing up the housing element, the CEQA document that was prepared by the city was an initial study negative declaration. During the public review period, the city received one comment letter from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife that talked about project level impacts from potential individual housing projects that could develop in the future in the city, and that these projects we took this letter and we filed it, and the state is correct that future environmental review of individual projects will be subject to review for special status species such as migrating birds or oak trees that are protected as a special status species as well. So there were some very good comments in their letter that will assist the city in the future reviewing projects. On to the next slide, please. And as I summarized here. Thank you. On to the next steps. Once the city has adopted the housing element, it will be returned to HCD for a 90-day review that's allowed by state law. HCD will either certify the housing element as being compliant with state law, conditionally certify, where they'll give you certification, but by a certain time they'll require that you do something, comply with a change in the housing element, or even rezone land, or declare the housing element, which is not what I think would happen with this housing element, but declare it out of compliance straight across the board. So on to the next slide, please. This would be an opportunity for the city council to ask questions, take public comment, and discuss the project. Thank you for your time listening to this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. McNulty. I want to commend you on a Herculean effort since January 26th, when the Planning Commission heard this. In allowing time for the publication of the agenda, you had to really work overtime and handle the handoff from Mr. Hamilton. Thank you very much. At this point, we're in the question period. I would like to ask council members to ask only questions at this point, and then we will move on to discussion following. Mr. Udi, do you have any questions?
To the consultant, in your opinion, is this our best shot?
Mayor Jacobowski, Council Member Udi. Is it your best shot? That's a very wide open statement. I think you've done an excellent job.
And what I was thinking is that this document has been, or this process has been around for quite a while. With 7 public outreach meetings, gone through 3 community services directors, 2 consultants, 2 attorneys, and been blessed by the Planning Commission. So, I'm looking at you as the expert, and I appreciate your explanation. So the question is this our best shot given where we are today, and that it would need to be submitted on Friday?
To qualify my answer is, my approach to the edits were to do my best at replying to the state while providing opportunities for you to keep local control as best as possible with design review. If I were to recommend any change at all to the document at this point, it would be to consider what you will do in the future if the state asks you to rezone additional land above and beyond what you've already designated before. And because of the 30% that they typically ask for, in my experience of working in housing elements in cities and counties for over 20 years, and I'm not going to tell you how many, they tend to ask for that, and they're pushing pretty hard. This is also a very, very unique cycle compared to the other ones. Before it was RENA, now it's about getting housing on the ground. But I think you've done a great job with this.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Councilmember Huang, any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Shepherd Romney, any questions?
Not at this time. I'm still trying to get through the pages of the errata that don't match up with my pagination. So
Okay.
I'll reserve questions if I can in a minute.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Tall?
Oh, you don't want me asking questions. No, I have no questions about your report, and I have appreciate the work that you put into, and also the staff, into getting something that we could present to our state.
Thank you. I share somewhat similar feelings in that this has been a very long-term process. I do feel, based on what I've read, that this is the best that we are going to be submitting, and I, understand where Councilwoman Shepherd Rumey had a few comments about either errors or additions that needed to be made, but I think it's the best we're going to get. At this point, I'd like to open the item up for public comments. I don't believe I see anyone here wishing to speak at this time. And may I ask if there are any public comment requests that were submitted electronically?
Just giving folks a chance to raise their hand
Sure.
if they wanted to. I'm not seeing any raised hands on Zoom, but we did receive a public comment, as Mr. McNulty had referenced, from the State of California Natural Resources Agency, Department of Fish and Wildlife. And they were commenting regarding the aspects of the project that they by law would be required to carry out or approve through.
Say it again more clearly. I'm sorry.
They submitted, the Department of Fish and Wildlife submitted a letter, and they provided comments regarding the aspects of the project that they would by law be required to carry out or approve through the exercise of its own regulatory authority under the Fish and Game Code. And this was previously distributed to council. It's the long letter that's in there, and to the public as well. So that's why I just summarized it for you all. And still no other raised hands for comment.
Okay,
Mayor, I do have a question about that.
yes, please.
Specifically, I think that several of my points will be summarized, or my concerns and questions will be summarized shortly by the city attorney. I went through this at length, and thank him for his time, as well as that of our consultant in helping us make progress in this with this document. So hopefully this will be our last version that we have to review. I also thank staff and our new director for stepping into a little bit of a quicksand and a quick catch up. And you are in there trying your best, and I appreciate that, as well as the residents and the planning commission that worked on this. But getting back to this letter, from one of my concerns had to do with the issue of an addition that was made in this document talking about our environmental status, as well as having, or should I say not having, any threatened or endangered species, which has come to our attention through residents as well as through this letter that that's not the case. So I'm assuming that that language will be able to be taken out in this regard, and we'll make sure that we protect whatever we need to do for the environment and for those species, should it come upon us to do so.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, since we don't have anything electronically, I'd like to bring the item back to the council for discussion. And I'd like to confirm that we have no additional comments or questions. And at this point, I'd like to open it up for our discussion. Councilmember Udi?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank our three community service directors, two different legal firms, planning commission, and everyone for wading through this. And, a particular shout out to Gretchen. Thank you for, going painfully through everything and really, second guessing and working it. So thank you a lot. And I look forward to our city attorney's summary of that great digging. I think this whole thing is still a moving target. And there's going to be, a lot of things that could still shift on us. So I would encourage council to not anticipate concessions for the state and give in to them until we're actually asked to do that, and be as cautious and conservative as we can to, protect the interests of the residents.
Thank you. Councilmember Huang?
Yes, I agree with my colleague, Councilmember Udi, and I want to thank to all the parties that was involved in putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Shepherd Rumey?
I have discussed this at length, and I so appreciate everybody's time and help to get this. There are still some issues that even occurred to me as I was sitting here. Table 17 still has some, I believe it's figure 17, which in my book may not match with the errata and the sheets. But anyway, that's page 97 of our packet, page 60, or what was 60 in this. But there's still some issues on that I'll be happy to discuss with our attorney, as well as it's come to my attention that some of the commercial properties that we designated are, the zoning is listed incorrectly for Huntington Drive 415, 475, Huntington Drive 2000 and 220. So I just want to make sure that those are checked by staff, and we can just make sure that we are turning in our best effort and we're correctly reflecting the status of those parcels, even though they're in commercial use.
Thank you.
And the
Vice-
rest, I think, I'm sorry, City Attorney Montez will be updating everybody on those other changes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Tall?
You know, for over 100 years, we have protected this community's single-family residential as a single-family residential community. And I think that we still would like to do so, but I also believe that given the ultimatum put on us by the state of California's overreach in demanding local zoning changes and so forth, that this report is housing element is the best we can do under these horrific and unfair circumstances brought on by our state. So I think that the consequence of not approving it puts us in even a weaker position. So, and I agree with Council Member Udi's comments that we should move forward as it is drafted and see what happens next.
Thank you. And I have no additional comments at this point. So I would like to close the public hearing and bring us back for our final deliberation before we have our motion.
Do we want our council to summarize?
Maybe this would be the time to request that.
Sure. So, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, I believe that Councilwoman Shepherd Romey would like to include in whatever motion gets made concerning adoption of this document, not only the comment with regard to figure 17 and ensuring its accuracy, but the following 10 comments I'll summarize. 1, to the extent possible, remove references to encouraging moderate housing development, as the focus should be on low, very low, and extremely low, unless the reference is specifically related to an HCD comment or requirement. 2nd, change the deadlines in the program, various programs dealing with rezoning, to make sure they reflect the 2024 deadline, as the city is accomplishing everything it's required to do prior to the February 12th deadline. 2nd, restore reference to the missing middle provisions in designated single-family neighborhoods. There was a deletion of that one word on page 58 of your agenda packet. Change the reference to moderate income housing, from moderate income housing to affordable housing in the density bonus program described on page 58, unless there's a reason that can't be done. In program 1.7, delete the reference to integrated housing and commercial projects under the SB 35 bullet point. On page 69 of your agenda packet, verify whether the reference on that page, the 2nd bullet at the top, should be ELI, VLI, and LI rather than including the moderate income. 7th point, on the 1st bullet of program 1.11, delete the sentence about the San Marino focused design theme and any other references throughout the document to a San Marino design theme in terms of the objective design standards to be considered in the future. On page 80, delete the words, there are no special status species or habitats in the 1st sentence of the 2nd paragraph. And then point 9, verify that the zoning on the parcels listed in table 13 is accurate, those sites that are considered for potential rezoning to the default density of 20 units per acre. And then remove any reference to the exclusion of commercial parcels fronting on Huntington Avenue from the overlay provisions. And with that, I believe I've captured her concerns, and those would be requested additions to any motion.
Thank you very much. Okay, as we go into our final deliberations, Councilmember Udi.
No other thoughts? Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Huang,
Thank you.
Councilwoman Shepherd Romney.
This has been a difficult process, and I do agree with my fellow council members that we need to be as conservative as we can in this regard. I do think that it will behoove us when we look at our numbers from our past cycle, where we had an overabundance of market rate or extremely expensive housing added to our city, and we have yet to meet those categories which we would call affordable. That the emphasis of this document should be focused in that regard, and I think these changes and hopefully continuing to work with our planning commission to develop design guidelines and massage those for commercial areas that we adopted before, those things that hopefully will increase the affordability and the promise that some construction will be beginning to come to San Marino in that regard, and that our neighborhoods will remain primarily single-family residences that we cherish now. And we can have more people in the city of a greater diversity. So I'm hoping that with that goal in mind, we can achieve that with a better document each time, and perhaps this will be the one. So thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Tom.
I have no further comments.
I think everything that I feel strongly has been said already. Do I have a motion?
I move to adopt the resolution number R-22-06 with the comments stated, with the summary comments from our city attorney, certifying the proposed initial study/negative declaration and adopting the 2021 to 2029 housing element update 6th cycle as amended of the San Marino General Plan.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Wong,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami,
Yes.
Councilmember Udi,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Talt,
Yes.
Mayor Jacobowski.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And I would also like to thank the Planning Commission for their extensive work on this throughout the process. Okay, we are ready to move on to new business. Item number 4, receive and file the financial report for the second quarter. May we please have a presentation from Director Chung and City Treasurer Han.
Is the clicker working?
Yeah.
No, okay. I'll just let you know when to click to the next one. Council members, thank you. I am, if you go to the next slide. Tonight, I'll be covering the second quarter, October through December 2021 financial status report. And I also have our city treasurer, Annie Han, should be presenting the second quarter cash and investments reports. The second quarter on the revenues, we've collected $11.8 million 6 months in. Compared that to last year of $11.6 million prior year. So overall, for the general fund and the public safety fund, that was an increase of 1.7% or $205,000. The reason for that increase was preliminarily property taxes came in close to 4% higher than last year, but we did see compared to last year, this time last year, we received $183,000 in CARES Act funding from the federal government. That's not reflected this year because that was a one-time funding from the federal government last year. And also last year, we did have a large amount of tree fines that came in. We haven't seen that this year, so we do see that drop. But overall, I wanted to highlight that the property taxes continue to be as expected, reaching 4 to 5%. Go to the next slide. On the expenditure side, we spent $12.9 million versus $12.2 million last year. So that's 5.5% higher than last year, or about $703,000. And the reason for that increase, as expected, is primarily MOU increases per our agreement. Also, we had last year we had a compression. As you remember, a lot of the facilities were closed due to COVID. We saw that in the especially in the community services department. So we don't see that as much this year, as facilities are not fully open, but compared to last year, we do see more services being provided. So hence we have more expenditures this year, but it is in line with what the budget was anticipating. We'll go to the next slide. So for the net income, basically revenues over expenditures on the general fund side, we see a slight decrease, but basically flat from last year at about a negative 1.2%, or about $60,000. So really flat from last year. And really that's because of, as I mentioned, the COVID closures that happened last year versus this year, while revenues continue to come into the city as anticipated. On the public safety fund side, you do see an increase of 8.7% on the net income, or negative $441,000. That's really, as I mentioned, due to MOU increases on the public safety side, and then also our pension that continues to increase year over year. With that, I'll turn it over to, oh, sorry, I have one more slide. On the fund balance side, overall, this is a great picture to see our health of our overall general fund. It remains at $13.3 million as of December 31st versus $13 million last year. So about $300,000 higher. The CIP fund continues to be high, $17.5 million versus $16.5 million last year. It's about $1 million higher. I do anticipate as we go into the next 6 months for the CIP fund balance to decrease as we have the larger projects for the road work. Also, San Marino Center eventually in probably the next fiscal year, but we'll see that CIP fund decreasing as we move forward. With that said, I'll turn it over to our city treasurer, Annie Han.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members, it's good to see everyone. Happy Chinese New Year. 新年快乐. Yeah, I know some of our staff members can speak a few words of Chinese now. It's great to the community. This next slide is a comparison between 2 years, 2021 and 2022. City of San Marino's total cash and investments on hand. And following what Paul mentioned, we have higher revenue and lower expenditures. And as we can tell by the slide, our balance for this year, 2022, and has been higher than previous year. As of December 31st of 2021, year end, we have about $36.4 million total cash balance. And since July of 2021, by looking at the chart between the blue chart and the red chart, the difference has been between $2 million to $2.7 million that our balance is higher than previous year. A major or one of the main contributors is the COVID relief funds we received back in July, which is about $1.4 million. But the balance has been maintaining pretty high on hand compared to previous year. Next slide, please. This slide is a comparison of 4 different rates. Treasury, 5-year Treasury, 1-year Treasury, our rate versus LAVE. As we can tell, the LAVE is still pretty much low. As of December 31st, it's 0.21%. Compared to 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, same time, LAVE is at 2%. So it's a big difference in rate drop. But we are seeing treasury rates going up for the last, I would say, since probably about August. As you can tell that from August going forward, that the rates for 5-year has been going up. Between August and November, you can see that sharp increase in the curve, which is the first one on the chart. We also, Paul and I, Director Chung and I, have picked up a few long-term 5-year investments, CDs and bonds, and the rate for 5-year has been kind of slowing down, but increased again. We're going through the budget process right now, but Paul and I will be we'll be on standby. We do have access cash on hand, but we will be on standby and continue monitoring the rates and make sound investments as we go. And this concludes my presentation.
Thank you both very much. I'm sorry, Director Chung, did you want to close with some additional comments?
Oh, no, I just wanted to let you know that we're available for questions.
We will have questions.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Why don't we change order? Councilwoman Shepherd Romey, do you have questions?
No, I wanted to thank you for the summary and your time still in keeping us abreast. I am interested to know in the long term, I know that we have many capital improvement projects like you suggested that are coming, that are either going to be renewed, for example, the street paving, as well as some other things that are coming to us that are multi-year, fairly large commitments. And I would appreciate knowing when we agree, for example, at the end of this budget cycle, where that puts us with the remaining capital improvement funds over the course as you see it develop over the next 3 to 5 years, because I'm concerned with projects such as the San Marino Center, the streets, soon to be a myriad of other projects that we have in town, the lifts and things like that, that we're actually going to have a shortfall in terms of our finances for those large improvements that we need to do for the city.
I just want to make sure I understand. Do you want to see a schedule, council member, or are you just asking if there's going to be an update regards to capital, the status of the capital projects?
Well, I think a schedule would be useful, but I know that we're in the midst of hearing about and approving potentially a large multi-year contracts for some of that work that I just talked about in this budget cycle right now. So I don't know when the appropriate time is, or if something can be developed so that we can make decisions when we're deciding on the funding for things during this process to get an idea of what that means in our capital improvement accounts.
Paul, what I think it is as we get into the capital improvement program and the budgeting process, let's just create a schedule so that we can see what the fund balance is, what the expenses are going to be, and then in future years, how we're going to be able to replenish the fund or what's going to happen to it. So if we make the bigger decisions,
Right.
we got that 5-year or 10-year visibility on what
Right,
we're
so we
doing.
can get a better idea, because not a snapshot. Thank you. Well said.
Which allows you to say go over, Councilmember Udi.
That actually is part of your budget presentation. When we get there, it doesn't have the how we replenish. So that's a good tip for us to add it in the future. But as we go through your CIP, you'll get a big fold out piece of paper that talks about where we're at, what the projects
And I
are,
think
where that will leave us.
In our next meeting, I think Director Chung is teed up for that discussion.
Yes. That's definitely, as we are in budget season, I will be providing additional information in the next month during the CIP budget study session. You'll also get an update regards to how the fund balance looks. How does that impact out years? We do produce a 5-year forecast for you as well, the CIP forecast, that you can see what the overall impact would be and how does that look? How much support does the general fund need to do to provide all the funding for all the various CIPs coming on board in the next 5 years?
Great,
That'd
thank
be
you. That
very
would be very helpful for me,
Yes.
and I think for the community as well.
Great.
Councilmember
Thank you,
Udi, questions?
No questions. I continue to say thank you to Director Chung and to Mark and to Annie for the great work. Really appreciate it. And I continue to say too, on schedules like this, it's kind of nice to see prior year budget and current year, because comparing to just prior year doesn't give us the full picture of how we're doing compared to our budgeting. And I think you do a great job budgeting, so we should put a spotlight on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Huang.
No, just thanks to Treasurer Han and Director Chung. And again, please keep up the good work.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
I have nothing. I too thank you both, and Mark, if he's on Zoom, for all the hard work you do. The only comment I would have is the concern that I see is that because last year was such an odd year with COVID, it's hard for a guy like me to make the comparisons. So I would hope that we could look at a non-COVID previous year to try to take a look at where we were. And I realize there's more income and expenses and so forth, but I'd like to see a non-COVID year comparison to see where we are.
Councilmember told I've seen a lot of companies comparing to 19 for that very reason.
Yes.
Yes, there's a 2020 there, but you were looking at 2019 to see how that compares to 2020.
Yeah, and I would just like to see that. It doesn't have to be elaborate, just as a benchmark.
And Vice Mayor, on the next item regards to the long-term financial forecast, I do touch on some of that, so I'll be able to answer some of that question, but then also I can provide you additional detail.
Oh, I do see.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I do
Okay.
have a few slides in my next presentation regards to how we look like pre-pandemic versus how we are looking now.
You
So
read my mind,
I
which
did.
is actually kind of scary.
We're all excited.
Today was Mark's birthday, so I did excuse him from Zoom, so I don't think it's on Zoom. Yeah.
Anything else, Vice Mayor?
No,
Tom?
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, just a few quick questions. I think you had said we, year over year, we seem to increase, and I want to make sure I've got this accurately, 4 to 5% increase in property taxes.
Yes, so.
And about how
last-
long have we had that trend?
So on my next presentation, I also do touch on that as well. So
I
I'm sitting
better
there
stop
too.
while I'm ahead. Then I'm going to draw my next question directly from this report. We received a $71,000 reimbursement from JPIA for city's liability insurance. I don't get much in the way of reimbursements. Can you just comment briefly on how that comes to be? Because if we're getting that as a smaller city, I'm sure it's proportional. Can you just comment on that item?
Yes, so being that CJPIA, it's a joint with regards to various agencies, they do their calculation. And at the end of the fiscal, basically the fiscal year, they do their final analysis. And then they refund back to the various agencies, whatever, however they formulate regards to our proportion to our contribution, and they give that back to us.
So is this the range that we usually see?
Oh, range wise, you know, that I'm not
71,000?
100% sure. I don't want to misspeak. I do not know that answer.
Not urgent, but if you can check on
I'll
that,
get
that
back
might
to you on
help
that.
us with future budgeting, but if it varies, it's better to be safe. My next question is for Treasurer Han. I know how diligent you are in trying to get us some decent earnings in these difficult times. On those 5-year instruments that you have, excuse me, what kind of rate is the going rate these days?
Between August and November, we pick up a few CDs, 5 years, and they range between 0.95% to highest of 1.25%.
Oh, great.
So right now, current 5-year treasury is at 1.27%. So the rates are going up. When we first started seeing rates going up, five-year rates going up, we were so excited. We want to just lock in a few CDs, but it keeps going up and up. So now we're kind of slowing down our investments. We want to monitor the market a little bit longer. We just had a really choppy January stock market, so it's kind of hard to predict what the trend is going to be. But from what we have heard from the Fed, the rates are going up. And so we will monitor the rates, and we will get into long-term CDs and bonds as we go.
Wonderful. I hear your banking background slipping in, so we're really fortunate. Thank you for that. And I offer my thanks also to Paul, Annie, and Mark. Thank you for your work. So let's see, I think we are near the end of this item, and I believe it is a receive and file. I've lost my notes here.
I move to receive and file the financial report reflecting the city's
We
revenues
haven't
and
had the
expenditures as of
public
December
comment?
31, 2021.
Sorry, yeah, opportunity for public comment. ma'am.
Thank you. That's why I need my notes. I'm useless without them. Any public comment?
There's no request for comment on this item.
Okay, so then, Councilmember Udi, had you finished your?
In anticipation of public comments, I move to receive and file the financial report reflecting the city's revenues and expenditures as of December 31, 2021.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Wong,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami,
Yes.
Councilmember Udi,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Alt,
Yes.
Mayor Jacobowski.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5, review of our fiscal year mid-year review. May we please have a presentation from Director Chung?
Great. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. This presentation will be a slight longer because there are a few items that I need to cover with you tonight. The agenda, as long as it looks, I will try to get through them as briefly as possible. So first and foremost, I'll be covering the mid-year for this current fiscal year. We are including some budget adjustments. Historically, we have not done that, but this year, after meeting with the city manager, we felt that we wanted to put some budget adjustments for this year, so that's in here as well. I provided the year-end projections, a 5-year forecast, the long-term financial forecast, and lastly, the general fund to the capital funds transfer amount. So let me again, in regards to the mid-year. Mid-year, 6 months in, it mirrors what I presented just earlier, but our budget this year is 31.4 million. This is for the general fund and public safety funds. 6 months in, we spent 11.8. We brought in, $11.8 million, which is close to 38%. One would think that we should be closer to 50%, but during these 6 months, we do trail, our revenues do trail as our property taxes for the second half of the year comes in a lot stronger. So we were going to catch up to this budget amount of $31 million by fiscal year end. If we compare that to prior year, it's close to 2% higher than prior year. Moving on to the expenditures, we budgeted $27.9 million. 6 months in, we spent $14.1 million. We're right on budget. We spent 50% of our budget so far this year. Comparing to last year, we are about 5.5% higher, or about $700,000 higher. And as I mentioned earlier in my presentation for the second quarter, that's really comprises of MOU increases, our UAL, or our unfunded accrued liability for pension costs that have increased. And then also naturally the COVID closures that happened last year versus this year. Touching on the fund balance one more time, general fund balance was 13.3 million for the 6 months versus last year's $13 million. And then the CIP fund is 17.5 million versus 16.5 million last year. Budget adjustments. So this year, as I mentioned, it's different than historic. The staff report goes into a lot more detail in regards to what the budget items are, what budget adjustments we are requesting. But just wanted to highlight for the council that overall, majority of these are net increases or decreases, meaning there's an expenditure and a revenue offsetting the increase. For instance, CDBG funding, the county park bond, and also some of the street rehab work. We are actually moving some of the capital budget and paying it out of Prop C funds. So those items, there are net zero changes and no impact to the budget. What does impact our budget are two items. One is the contract legal services for COVID-19. During the budget process last year, I did not include a COVID legal expense budget. We didn't anticipate to spend legal expenses regards to COVID, but we have. And so I'm coming to council to request $175,000 out of our general fund reserves. And this will be covered by our ARPA funds. City Treasurer mentioned earlier the $1.4 million that we received out of the total of 3.4 we're going to receive total. So a portion of that will be paying, the 175,000 will be paid out of that ARPA funds. And then also one other item is the out of the capital equipment fund, the taser devices, 7,350. I know it's a small amount, but we wanted to reflect it here because this is the 4th year out of the 5-year lease. And we didn't want to lose track of that. So we felt that we wanted to include this so that next year it gets also included in the budget. So the total fiscal impact is 175 out of the 175,000 out of the general fund, and then $7,350 out of the capital equipment fund. Moving on to year-end projections. This is staff's best estimate in regards to how we believe we're going to end the year. It's always a moving target, but we do our best to project out looking at historic spending. Overall, we believe that we will be on budget for our revenues. We budgeted $31.4 million. We estimate $31.1 million. It's a very conservative look. I do believe that we'll be able to meet the budget or exceed it, but that's just currently being that property taxes are coming in at about 3.5, 3.4%. versus what I budgeted at closer to 5%. So I just wanted to be conservative there. Regards to year-end expenditures, we do anticipate our expenditures actually to be lower than our budget, $1.7 million lower. And so our budget currently is $29 million. We're expected to come in at about $27.2 million. And really the driving force behind those two, the reason for that decrease is two things. One is salary savings from various vacancies from positions, and also some contract services due to services that are not being rendered. And so we see that savings there. So even though our revenues might come in on budget, we do expect our expenditures to come in less than budget. So overall, at the end of the year, I'm anticipating a surplus of $3.8 million. Moving on to a topic that was just a question that was brought up by the mayor and also the vice mayor. I wanted to highlight a few areas of how we're doing over COVID. And so what I did here was I wanted to show the council, first and foremost, our biggest revenue source, property taxes, consists of 69 to close to 70% of our overall revenues. You can see historically, looking at 17-18, we're close to $18 million. And as the pandemic came on board 19-20, our revenues continue to grow. And to answer Mayor's question, how has it been performing? You can see it's been performing really well and been seeing a overall 5% or so increase since 17-18. And I do expect that to continue into next year as well. Just another example, community development department. I wanted to just show you how for that department, their main revenue source, of course, is the permits, the plan checks. In 17-18 was the peak. And then we saw this drop in 18-19. And I found out that in 17-18, there was this huge push for the community to renovate and build. But then they did see this little pullback in 18-19. But then, of course, the pandemic happened, yet we didn't see a big dip. And then you see also in 21-22, I am projecting it to be almost equal to 17-18 levels, being that there's been a huge pent-up demand from the community to renovate their homes. And so we expect that to continue into next year. Another area that I wanted to highlight was Recreation Division. Recreation Division was, as I mentioned, one of the divisions that was hit the hardest during COVID. 17-18 was their peak when they hit $1.4 million in revenue. But it continued to decrease. And as you can see in 2020, fiscal year 2021, last year, that's when the majority of the facilities were closed. No services were being rendered. But we are seeing some life here. We do expect, I've been seeing about an 83% increase in rec revenues. This is my best guess of how we believe we're going to end the year, but please note that we won't reach 17-18 levels, being that there are a lot of rec programs that are not being offered, that were offered back in 17-18 and 18-19. On the library side too as well, similar pattern. We saw that 17-18 was their peak, and then we saw a decrease as we went into 2021 as facilities were closed. But then we do see this big jump back in 2021. And the reason for that, of course, or 21-22, sorry. And that reason for that is passport revenues. The library's main revenue source is passport revenues. And as we slowly get out of this pandemic, there's been a big demand for passport revenue. So I do anticipate that to continue to grow as we get out of this pandemic, hopefully. Also wanted to show the council regards some expenditure side on recreation, a similar trend, meaning in 17-18, that was the peak on their expenditures as their services, they were providing various services. But as the pandemic came on online, 19, 20, 2021, you see this huge decrease in expenses in recreation, being that facilities and services weren't being rendered due to the closures. But then, of course, as we are coming out of the pandemic, we increase our expenses as services for the community and programs are being rendered. As you are aware, because of Omicron, the last couple of months, we did also decrease in expenditures, but of course, revenues as well. And then I just wanted to mirror library as well. Not as drastic, but similar, being that libraries, for the most part, they didn't fully close, but you do see a similar trend. 17-18 was their peak, and then they kind of dipped down into 2021, when last year during the height of the pandemic. And then we see increase in expenditures as we slowly get out of the pandemic and services are rendered fully. With that said, moving on to the 5-year forecast. It's always difficult to forecast 5 years, let alone 29 years, but 5 years. And the reason I say that is because we still are in COVID, and it's hard to predict how COVID will impact us in the next 6 months to 5 years. But with that said, what I do know is that I use historic assumptions, being conservative, using 3.5% property tax increase instead of the usual 5% that we've been seeing. On the expenditure side, the challenge that I have and staff has is inflation, as you've probably been hearing and seeing and feeling it in your bank accounts as well. Inflation is high. I've got noticed that the gas company, they're expecting some 38% next year. So I need to drill in more into that detail, but inflation percentages are all across the board. I've used between 3 to 7%, but that might be a little conservative going into next year. And I'm still working on what best way to approach the inflation factor. But I wanted to express that to the council as we are going into budget and as we're establishing next year's budget. With that said, as you can see, fiscal year 25, 26 in the out years, it's in red. And the reason for that red, or showing that we're going to go into a deficit, is because the public safety parcel tax, it's a 5-year parcel tax that's due to expire in 24, 25. So I assume that if the parcel tax does not pass, then we'll go into a deficit in that year. And I use that same assumption into the long range forecast, which I'll go into now. So the long range forecast is a 29-year forecast. And so basically, this is just a projection of showing the council how our revenues look versus our expenditures. And because it's difficult, of course, to predict 29 years into the future, what I wanted to highlight to the council is certain areas where big ticket items reflect this forecast. First and foremost, our pension obligation, the only debt that the city has on the books, is going to be paid off in fiscal year 23-24. That's a savings of $600,000 to the general fund. So that once that goes, that gets paid off and is matured, we will see an increase in revenues. Well, not revenues per se, but net wise. And also in 24-25 in the public safety parcel tax, I'm assuming that it does not pass. And what impact does that make? Our revenues, of course, will dip below our expenditures. And then the third item that I wanted to highlight for the council is in fiscal year 38-39, we do know that the pension UAL, the unfunded accrued liability, that's when we will see that expenditure will start decreasing. And the reason for that decrease is as staff retires, they're in the new pension PEPRA program, which costs the city less money. So we'll see that expenditure decreasing in fiscal year 38-39. I just have a few more slides here. This slide I wanted to show the council in regards to the surplus. So very similar to the earlier slide, but I wanted to just show that, as I mentioned, when the pension obligation fund, or I'm sorry, the pension obligation bond gets paid off in 23-24, you'll see a little spike because over our, we won't have that expense of $600,000. But then in 24-25, if the public safety parcel tax does not get passed, then you'll see a huge drop in the revenues because the fact that that's close to $3.7 million that won't be coming into the general fund. Hence, we'll be in the deficit for the next almost 10 years. And then as the pension UAL becomes less expensive for the city, we will reverse back to being having a surplus in years 38-39. Two more slides for you. Every year I couldn't come to council when I present the mid-year long-term forecast with the overall general fund to the capital funds project fund transfer would look like. So when we finished the last fiscal year, we had a unassigned fund balance of $15.6 million. And we put aside 1.25% for our annual reserve contribution, and also set aside 40% for our fiscal policy from our reserve balance. So the net that the city council can consider to move to the CIP fund would be $3.4 million. Historically, council would have made that motion tonight, but I wanted to hold off on that motion tonight until the March meeting, where I would have more information for the council regards to the actual transfer of to the CIP fund. Last slide I have is just a quick summary, being that I covered quite a bit of information. So just kind of highlighting what I talked about. Fiscal year 21-22 actuals are on track with budget. We do anticipate expenditures to be lower than budget. I did have some budget amendments, and we are expected to end the year at $3.8 million of surplus. For the 5-year forecast, I mentioned that the pension obligation bond will be paid off in 24-25. And also the public parcel tax will expire and is not included in the forecast in fiscal year 25-26. And lastly, the long-term financial forecast. One thing I did not highlight on that chart is that part of the street rehab program, we do expect in fiscal year 34-35, if we go as planned, that we will go from spending $3.5 million every year to get our roads back up to par, that we'll be going into maintenance mode starting 34-35, where we will be only spending close to $700,000 to maintain our roads. So that should be a expenditure savings on the capital fund side. And lastly, the pension UAL portion, we should see that decrease as we go into fiscal year 38-39. To finish my presentation, just wanted to highlight to the council that San Marino's financial status remains strong, robust, and is expected to improve as the local economy recovers from the pandemic. That finishes my presentation. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chung. It appears that you also have been working nonstop since our last city council meeting.
Yes.
Late night oil, I presume.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Moving on to questions from council. Councilmember Huang?
Yes, I'm looking at the budget surplus, year end is 3.8 million. Seems like past 6 years, the surplus has always been about 3 million. So wouldn't that cover the public safety parcel tax doesn't pass? Wouldn't that cover it or no?
Yes and no, council member, being that historically, we've had years where it was 4 million. This year expected to be 3.8, but that really hinges upon many factors such as, the continual revenue growth of property taxes, the public safety parcel tax. I know council can increase that annually, but we haven't increased the parcel tax as well. That's just staff's best guess, but I have forecasted even in the second year that surplus will drop to less than $2 million as well. So that's why I believe it's important for that public safety parcel tax.
Okay, great. Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Councilwoman Shepherd Romey, questions?
No, I am so impressed that you have been able to put all this together and yes, do it in such a short amount of time. So thank you. And thank you, Treasurer Hahn, for your work in helping with this. And the projections, my only concern is, again, given the COVID situation, how realistic, I know we don't know. So some of these projections might be for the future. So I don't want you to, I appreciate knowing when things are more importantly going to end, such as a parcel tax and how our liabilities will be, unfunded liability will come and go over time and that type of thing. So I really appreciate those numbers. And then the projections are just so hard to even anticipate. So thank you for putting them out there. But I think the most instructive to me is some of the other information that you're providing in this and to keep us informed. And as those continue to be on our radar in the short term and long term, I think that's most useful for planning for us to know where things go. So thank you for including those notes.
Thank you. Councilmember Udi?
Yeah, a couple of questions. We've been spending a lot on roads, streets, sewers, all that type of stuff. So how much money do we have in the bank today and how much do we have last year at this time?
I can tell you,
And
let
just,
me get to that
just
number.
sort of kind of fine.
I can get you that exact number. Actually.
He doesn't do sort of kind of.
It's on the ending schedule.
Yes. So as in the bank, we have $36.4 million versus last year was 33.7 million.
Yeah, okay, so we got, I mean, for the council, for the public, we consistently have more money in the bank year over, or month by month, year over year than prior years. Despite the reinvesting back into our assets.
And we will also see another big increase of that 1.4 million from the federal government, from Biden's, the President Biden's ARPA money as well.
And then my real question is, you're projecting expenses being down 1.7 million from budget. So if you're projecting expenses to be down, why should we authorize an increase of $182,000 for the budget adjustment?
It's a great question, council member, and it's because we, as you're aware, we do the budget line item. We focus on our line items, and being that yes, our expenses are going to be lower, but I want to make sure that we reflect that budget of especially the COVID legal expenses as a line item, so we budget for that properly. That's really the goal of why I want to make that a budget amendment, so that we track that. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I would believe you could track that without making the adjustment. Because I just feel for us to approve $182,000 increase in expenses when we're projecting a $1.7 million reduction from budget, I would just say, oh, you know where the money is, just, make a schedule.
It's more of a formality, so that we don't lose track of that budget and why we budgeted that amount for it.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
No.
Vice Mayor Cobb?
Yes, and I would imagine you might go into more detail when you bring the motion, but what's the difference between, other than the actual numbers are 1.25% of annual reserve contribution and then the 40% reserve balance of operating revenues? Aren't they the same thing, just different numbers?
Yes, in a sense that they're both reserves. So yes, to answer your question, the reason for that The 40% is in our fiscal
Right,
policy.
I appreciate that, but I'm
The-
not, the 1.25%.
The 1.25 is from the ad hoc committee that was recommended back, I believe 5 years ago. It was part of their recommendation to set aside 1.25 operating reserve just as a buffer. And so we've been doing that historically. It's not part of our fiscal policy. So I am coming to council in the February 25th meeting to add that as an official fiscal policy to our policy. But other than that, that's where that 1.25 operating reserve comes from.
Okay, I'm still a bit confused, but if you're, sounds like you're gonna talk about it more in late February and also in March, so I'll hold off. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work on this.
No problem.
Thank you. And since I based my questions on your written report, may I go to page 938, above operating revenues, where we are talking about this 3.8 million and it representing 62.7% beyond what the 40% reserve would be. I'm presuming that is because of the ARPA being included, correct?
Yes,
So
just half of that ARPA, 1.4.
And that will get to my second part. So we are going from the 40 to 62.7 because in part of ARPA, and then next year we should expect something very similar in terms of the surplus because of more ARPA, presuming our spending and our income remain somewhat constant, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you so much. At this point, I'd like to open the item up for public comments. City Clerk Baker, do we have any public comment?
Just giving folks chance. Nope, no raised hands. There are no public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to bring the item back to council for discussion. And is there anything further that we would like to add at this point? Councilmember Huang?
Oh, no comment. Just thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Shepherd Romey?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Udi?
I'm still not bought into the budget adjustment.
Okay, maybe you can talk to the finance liaisons about that. And see where it gets you. Vice Mayor Tall?
I have no further comments. Thank you.
Nor do I. And at this point, may I have a motion, please?
Well, I move to receive and file the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 mid-year financial review, updated 5-year financial forecast and long-term financial projections, and approve the budget amendments as noted in the staff report.
Well, so we're approving the budget amendments today, or?
Yes.
Please. The 180 some thousand.
If, I'm sorry, I thought you had taken that off the table, but I misunderstood.
Do I have a second? And then we'll come back and discuss. Do I have a second on the motion? I'll second that. Discussion. Go ahead.
Weren't you, I know you lay it all out here, but if I've got a council member who I trust from the financial sense, still has some questions, I'm not comfortable in voting for it.
Councilmember Udi, would you
Yeah,
like
just
to?
where I come from, you're managing a $30 million budget. And you're projecting that you're gonna have $1.7 million below. And so I wouldn't have the guts to go to my boss and say, I want to spend another 182,000. I would just suck it up and find a way to take care of it if I thought I was gonna be saving $1.7 million.
Well, but and this is where the, perhaps I missed, you have to do it because of the lines in the budget. And so really that money will come back ultimately in an excess fund type of way. Is that correct?
It's a net zero.
Yeah, that's,
It's a net zero. It's just, to me, optics that if you're gonna
And I think Dr. Marlowe had some original thinking on this. Would you like to comment further?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a result of, as the finance director has indicated, we do have a bottom line budget. And so as Councilmember Udi is indicating, we could say we have savings over here, so we're going to spend it over here without coming to appropriate more money. And we could do that. However, this council has expressed interest in discussions when at the end of the fiscal year, certain accounts are overdrawn and other accounts are underdrawn. So with all due respect, we as staff need to go one way or the other. If the council is comfortable understanding that at the end of the fiscal year, as long as there's a net savings, that you're comfortable with my authorizing the movement of money, which I am technically authorized to do in the code, then we could dispense with asking for the money here. But if the council wants to continue its current and totally acceptable practice of asking questions at the end of the year when certain accounts go over, then we would like to keep the budgeting clean so that you can see how the money is being spent in each individual department. So the issue here is that there's one account that is potentially in danger of going over. And so we're asking for the money there transparently so you know what it's being spent on. And if you're comfortable with that increase, then that increase would then be accountable to you. If, on the other hand,
Steve, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Explanation.
Yeah, and I've got, I wasn't sure what you were uncomfortable about, but I'm comfortable too.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. The discussion is complete. May I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Wong,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami,
Yes.
Councilmember Udi,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Talt,
Yes.
Mayor Jacobowski.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 6, agreement between the city and all city management services for crossing guard services. May we please have a presentation from Chief Encounter, who I understand will magically appear, and Director Chung.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. Greetings from the beautiful city of Sacramento. I'm here to request a approval for the agreement between the City of San Marino and all cities management services, better known as our crossing guard services with the San Marino Unified School District. The business has been in operation since 2006. They have about 90% of all crossing guard business within the San Gabriel Valley and the larger area. We determined that after we did a survey of the San Gabriel Valley police departments. We have been in contract with the company since 2006 to provide these services, and we were unable to find any other company that does this. The few cities that do crossing guard services on their own do it from their own personnel. They have their own city crossing guards. We're recommending the City Council approve an agreement with all cities for a 3-year period, which will stabilize the cost instead of doing the year-to-year. Under the new agreement, the city will pay the contractor for services totaling $598,667.40. One issue that is important to discuss is when the budget closed after the end of 21-22, we did not complete the budget or the budget request, and for 6 months it was not completed. We have looked at our systems and have come up with ways to fix that. Director Chung will be discussing that in a little bit more in detail as soon as I'm done. And additionally, because of the late information we received from all cities, there was an additional $18,772.05 added to the budget. We're asking again for this to be approved. This has been discussed with the city attorney, and we recommend the council approve the agreement for crossing guard services provided by all cities management services and appropriate funds in the amount of $18,772,005 to make up for the last 6 months. And I will hold off on providing the motion until Finance Director Chung has discussed this issue that the two of us have discussed in detail.
Great, thank you, Chief. So yes, I've met with the chief, I met with the city manager. I also met with the executive team and my staff as well in regards to this particular item that was brought up. I have actually implemented procedures regards to preventing it from happening, meaning a contract tracking system, a spreadsheet. It's a manual process, but I have implemented that. I'm also looking into our financial system, Springbrook, to see if they can add a module that can actually track this so that it doesn't have to be manual. And if I get more clarity from that company, I will meet with the city manager to recommend what we can do to implement that module. Other than that, moving forward, I will be producing this contract tracking spreadsheet to the department heads, making sure that we are in contract compliance.
Thank you. Anything further to add, Chief and Contra?
Sorry, meeting up. There you go.
Can you hear me again?
We can now hear you, yes.
All right, thank you very much. I have just the motion to present to the council. That recommended motion is to move to approve the agreement between the city of San Marino and all city management services for the crossing guard services beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2024, and appropriate funds in the amount of $18,772 to the other contract services account 103-30-4150-0000. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you both for your presentation. At this point, we'll move to questions from council. Councilmember Huang, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Councilwoman Shepherd Romey, question?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Udi?
No, I just really one quick question. I understand how things fall through the crack from time to time, but to the finance director, are you comfortable that your system will catch future contract expirations?
It's, to be transparent, it's not a foolproof system, being that it's a manual process.
Right.
But at the same time, I believe that being more proactive regards to looking at thresholds, looking at invoices, we'll be able to catch it for as much as I can.
Okay.
So I feel pretty confident that we'll be able to catch most of it.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm comfortable with you and Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Chao?
No, I have no questions. Thank you, gentlemen.
And I have no questions at this time. I'd like to open it up for public comment. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak on this item?
I am not seeing any raised hands, so no request for comment on this item.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to bring the item back to council for discussion. Councilwoman Shepherd Romey.
I just want to thank the chief. I know that this is for all of his hard work. It sounds like they are the only game in town, and for good or for bad, we need to contract with them unless we take upon ourselves that similar service. And it did occur to me, I don't know if you had any contact with the school district in this process and considered whether they have received any complaints or issues with service over the last time period. And if there's somebody on staff, your staff, I see Commander Bonda here, who has sort of an interface with the school district on this, and whether long-term that might be something we need to consider adding, just to make sure that we are receiving regular updates about their services.
Councilor
Sort of a
Shepherd Romey,
question.
Oh.
I apologize.
If I can, we do have a system in place. Our Commander Tim Tebbets, the operations commander, meets, is the liaison between not only the school and also the crossing guard company. Commander Blondet had that before I switched the responsibilities. And we have had a very few minor complaints that we're able to work on specifically with the company to make sure that they are corrected as soon as possible and to ensure that the students, primarily elementary school students, are safe going back and forth from school.
Great. Thank you very much. And I appreciate indulging that extra question and all the work that you did, as well as the idea that Director Chung is putting forward to help us so we don't find ourselves in this situation again. I appreciate your efforts, and I know there'll be extra work, it sounds like, since it is a manual for you and Mark and your department, but it will be appreciated. Thank you for coming forward and suggesting that.
Thank you. Discussion, Councilmember Huang?
No, I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Udi?
No comments, thank you.
Councilmember Tall?
I
I'm
have-
sorry, Vice Mayor?
It's okay. I have no further comment.
And I have none either. I'm delighted that we have this support for the school district and this relationship that seems to have good communication. And with that,
I move to approve the agreement between the city of San Marino and all city management services for crossing guard services beginning July 1, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2024, and appropriate funds in the amount of $18,722 to the other contract services account 103-30-4150-0000.
thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
May I amend that? There's,
Sure.
the motion is different from the recommendation. It's $18,772.05.
Okay, so
Thank you.
we're adding that 5 cents. Thank you.
I'm not sure about that now.
We are following strict accounting procedures. Okay. And I'm sorry, we did have the second, correct?
Yeah.
Councilwoman? Thank
Yes,
you.
I will correct the amended motion.
Okay.
Or I will second.
Thank you for your 5 cents.
Roll call, please.
I got a
Councilmember
nickel
Wong,
here.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami,
Yes.
Councilmember Udi,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Talt,
Yes.
Mayor Jacobowski,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. As the city manager noted in her report and Commissioner Bogue weighed in, item 7 is being pulled from tonight's agenda. So we will move on to the consent calendar. Do any council members wish to pull any items from consent? As a reminder, council members may vote no on a specific consent calendar item without pulling the item for discussion.
I'd like to pull 13.
13, anyone else like to pull another item from the consent calendar? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve 8 through 12, 14 through 16?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Wong,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami,
Yes.
Councilmember Udi,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Talt,
Yes.
Mayor Jacobowski,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Okay, so item 13, that is Director Throne. Vice Mayor, did you?
Yeah, I had a very specific question and we have to be very careful about monies that we take from other people's money we take for improvements and operations in the park. Because if we do that, then we expose ourselves to criticism of the charge. And I don't know if this would qualify for such criticism, given that we're doing something positive for the environment here. Nonetheless, was that in consideration at all when you started talking about and came up with the suggestion to use recycle monies at Lacey Park?
We did check with the grant manager and we found from our information with them that there was no such impediment for us to use those funds. That there was no trigger, as it were, because we charged for the weekends.
I mean, legally that may be the case, but still, does it run us into any public relation problem?
I would
I
not
don't think so.
but-
I mean, if there's going to be a public relations problem, it's our own issue, not related to whether we accept this grant or not. There's nothing that would trigger anything in this grant.
Did you consider any other item for use of this Cal Recycle funds?
Well, the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments offered to take the money from us to use for their SB 1383 purposes. And we thought that since we're already contributing toward the food recovery program, that we could take advantage of composting, get Athens to participate with us. We do get regular calls from residents about composting and can we come and pick up composting at Lacey Park. It's a perfect meld of being able to use other people's money to make a nice clean area to put compost for residents to be able to access.
Okay, I have no further questions.
May I follow up?
Sure.
Mayor, would this composting program be available to surrounding communities as well, should they wish to partake of our probably pretty abundant composting? I know from already using or going to the Stoneman site that there are a number of people there, and I've never seen anybody ask for IDs or proof of residency. So will this be a similar program, and will people out of San Marino be able to come and avail themselves of the compost?
Well, this would be behind our lock gates. And so we would approach it in a similar fashion to folks that want to pick up sandbags from the corporation yard. They do need to show us that they live in San Marino before we distribute sandbags to them. And I would think we would want to do the same approach in this, if that's something that the council would want to make sure that our compost stays in San Marino.
Well, right now it's not, because right now our compost is at Stoneman, and I haven't ever been asked to show ID. So is the Stoneman facility going to be closed and it's all going to be at the park? I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand.
Yes, we would we would centralize that operation to Lacey Park, because that's where we'll have a much nicer facility than where we're currently doing it. And we'll have some measure of being able to monitor who comes in to use it, because it will, we've not exactly figured out where to place it, but it'll be in some portion of the park on the Virginia side that folks will be able to access during park normal operations.
So on a daily basis,
Yes, it would be
not
open.
just the weekends.
It would be open when we're open for public work. So we've not worked out that yet. I want to make sure it's not going to become a problem that we've got people coming in and sort of like with the Stoneman sandbag area, you know, you've got to, we don't monitor that. That's just there for the general public because it's just easy for our residents to get to. But we do know that on occasion, some people come and they do liberate some sandbags for their own purposes outside of town.
But to our, I guess it would be Councilmember Taltz, or the general concern that some monies that should be benefiting greater area than just San Marino, it would behoove us to make compost and sandbags and things of that nature available to people who wish to come, as long as without being exclusive to San Marino residents, in my view.
If I can weigh in on this matter, I think you're bringing up a good topic. We first heard about this at our COG meetings, and I know you are active as a director with the COG group at your staff level. And this is an outstanding use of our money, and this is a huge grant statewide. Is there a way that you could share it with surrounding communities and recommend that they consider it also? I know we have a large amount of compost material, but I think as we are moving forward and becoming more aware, I would love for you to be able to share with surrounding communities this idea.
That's excellent, Mayor. This grant would go toward the physical construction of a nice area, a very fancy material storage area. We generate a lot of our own compost through our tree contract. We generate a lot of compost. Athens is committed to providing us with compost. So it's really, we will have as much compost as we want, but currently we don't have a nice, neat area to keep it. And these funds will go to build a nice, neat area. And then, when the park is open, you can come in and grab as much compost, because really the compost comes from air all over when it's delivered back to San Marino. So some of it is ours directly. Some of it Athens produces through their facilities, and it comes back to source.
When you were talking about the tree landscaping, so that's internal that becomes part of this as opposed to contract tree landscaping, correct?
The contract tree landscaping, which you will be seeing shortly, does have a provision that there are to provide to us a certain amount of mulched material for our own uses that is generated here in San Marino. That way we keep the biological material here. They just chip it on site and they can broadcast it. That's.
Thank you. Councilmember Tall, is there anything further on this item?
No, thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion for approval, please?
I move to approve resolution number R-22-03, approving the filing of an application for SB 1383, local assistance grant funds from the California Department of Resources, Recycling and Recovery.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Wong,
yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami,
Yes.
Councilmember Udi,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Talt,
No.
Mayor Jacobowski.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. My apologies. Okay, so we are moving on to written communications or public writings distributed. Do we have any written communication or public writings for distribution? Hearing none. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? We see nobody live. Do you have anyone online who would like to speak?
The one person left has not requested to speak.
They're not watching Olympics? Wait. Something's wrong.
Okay, thank you. And future agenda items. Is there any council member who would like to recommend an item for future council agenda? Hearing none. Do any council members have any special adjournments they wish to note? And there being none, I close the meeting at 8:26. Thank you.
Thank you for the chair.